Hello everyone and welcome to Action RPG. I'm your host Aaron, and for today's video we're headed to the world of Last Epoch. Now, as a lot of you know, I am not huge into React content. I will do it from time to time, normally when there are a lot of community members sending me the video. Now, yesterday on stream, I said I think 20 people sent this to me. I actually went and counted today, and it was 11. But 11 different community members said, hey, you should probably react to this. So I thought, why not do it today? As you can see, the subathon is still going. We still have 75 hours on the clock. And this is Kripp's video on his breakdown and thoughts of Last Epoch. I literally haven't watched a minute of this, so we're going to watch it together. And of course, I will link the video in the description. Let's go.
Hey guys, how's it going? Kripp here. Today I want to give you guys just a bit of a talk about Last Epoch. Now, this is a game that I didn't really play that much before it had its 1.0 official release a week and some change ago, and a lot of people have been asking me what I think about the game, but I didn't really want to make this video until I felt pretty comfortable that I understand the game on a fairly deep level to properly, give you guys this information.
Props.
So overall, how good do I think Last Epoch is? I think it is very good. It does kind of go in between PoE and Diablo, which is how a lot of reviewers have placed the game.
So far, I agree with everything he said.
A lot of reviewers have placed the game kind of in between the two, presumably in the middle. I would say it's very much not in the middle between those two games. I think it is a lot closer to PoE in the way that the game is kind of carefully designed. The min in the game, the details, they are extremely fine-tuned, except for a few examples, of course. And it is like Diablo in the fact that you can just pick up the game and play it at your own will. So it has a really high level of complexity. Every different class is different. For better or worse, some of them are certainly better and some of them are certainly worse. The classes just have a very...
I'm sorry, Forge Guard.
Different thing about each one. Even though there is kind of the subclass that you start the game off with, kind of branching out into three. Usually those three play very differently, except for a few examples, unless you really want to kind of push it out and do a very similar build. And while it has a lot of complexity on the top end, the classes, to really understand the best combinations that you should be using, actually you have to do a fair amount of research and looking into things, which is great for someone like me because I love figuring out and making my own builds in these type of games. But the reason it's a game that is approachable, like Diablo 4, for example, is because the game doesn't really scale your character that crazy. So in Path of Exile, we have this thing where defenses are extremely tightly tuned. There's no item in the game that doubles your effective health in PoE. There may be one or two in very specific builds that basically build into those items, and again, very, very few. In Diablo, there's items that quadruple the effective health of your character, and it's easy to get one. You just get a chest piece that has 4 defensive stats, and then you get a shield that has 4 defensive stats for another quadruple, and then you get a leggings with...
Diablo 4's itemization is terrible. It's terrible. Perfect point.
4 defensive stats and another quadruple. And while they have tried to kind of tighten the knobs on damage in Diablo 4, they haven't really been very successful at doing that. And that's why Diablo 4 is pretty casual, because they make the game as a baseline pretty easy. And they do that because they haven't really finely tuned the balance on either offense or defense for a character. So that's why when you play Diablo 4, you can just play whatever junk build you want because the baseline difficulty of the game is low. So that's why I consider Diablo 4 a pretty casual game. Path of Exile, the baseline difficulty of the game is quite high for someone that hasn't played it before. It's extremely high for anyone that tries to play the game without looking up some information about the build they're willing to play. So where does Last Epoch fit into these things? Last Epoch, I say, has about as much control over defenses as PoE. I think if they fine-tune the ward mechanic, it would actually be even more finely tuned than PoE in terms of defenses. And in terms of damage,
I love that Kripp, who's basically just playing the game for the first time, can already determine that ward is broken. He already knows it. He already knows it.
It's also very finely tuned. I would say that Last Epoch has finely tuned. There's no like super crazy damage scaler, again, except for very few instances, outliers that are probably going to be addressed. But for the most part, characters are not going to do million times more damage a few levels later. Okay, that's not how Last Epoch works. And because you have a lot of complexity in the characters, the fact that the multipliers don't go too crazy for offense and they don't go too crazy for defense, it means that you can just play whatever trash build you want, and it's really not going to be that bad. Because even though you might be doing everything wrong, your character might be like half as tanky and do like a third of the damage, but not like a million times less damage like
You could play any build like Ice Cream Elemental, Golem Storm,
Diablo, and not 100 times less tanky or damage like PoE. So because of that, it's a game that satisfies people who love the complexity in ARPGs like myself, and it satisfies people who just kind of want to play the game at their own pace. This is a game where you absolutely can do both, and they've been extremely careful to kind of craft the mechanics in the game for people to be able to do this. And honestly, it's really impressive. I think that's why the game has done so well at launch. They had over 200,000 players. I think that's why the game has done pretty well. Whenever I stream it, you guys seem to love me playing it, and I love playing it. I think it's an awesome game. And overall, it's just a blast. It delivers on everything an ARPG should for the most part. The class identity, the fun and actually just playing, the flexibility to respec and try different abilities, the options to kind of tackle the content without feeling overwhelmed, even if you don't do a lot of the research. It's overall pretty good. There are some outliers, and I don't really know how big or active their dev team is, and I feel like in cases like these, if outliers go unaddressed, it can kind of hurt the game over time. Like right now, they have a mechanic called Ward, which is pretty similar to barriers in Diablo 4. It's kind of like temporary HP. Now, it's kind of like barriers in Diablo 4 because they last like a certain amount of time, and you can scale something called ward retention to make it degrade less. It's not like barriers where you put it up and it lasts 5 seconds. No, ward naturally decays. The more you have, the faster it decays, but the more ward retention you have, the slower that decay rate is. And there's certain abilities that just grant you ward. So if you're taking advantage of those abilities, you can have like 10 times the amount of health that you should have. And for Last Epoch, that is an extreme outlier. So right now,
correct.
I think the mechanic is actually pretty well designed, for the one exception that I think it should have a cap based on a percentage of your health. Like, I don't think ward should exceed double your health, for example. In a rare case, a rare W for Diablo 4, I think Diablo 4 had barrier mechanics right. I think temporary barriers are pretty cool. Last Epoch's take on temporary is even cooler, I would say. It's just the caps not existing in Last Epoch make it a pretty problematic mechanic overall. A lot of people have played Last Epoch.
That would be a super interesting fix. You can't quadruple, or max is quadruple your life. Well, then how does it work for low life? Well, they would have to figure out something like that. But if you've got 2,000 life, you can have up to 8,000 ward, 10,000 ward. They could easily make that happen.
like a ton this week, and some of them have said that they don't really kind of see the point in like going, you know, crazy endgame. Like there isn't that much endgame in Last Epoch, and that is the main concern that I've seen in the community. Overall, I think they are unfortunately correct. There isn't that much endgame in Last Epoch, but if someone really likes their character, really likes how it plays, or they really want to challenge themselves, Last Epoch has a system that appropriately rewards you for playing at a higher difficulty, which again is so rare in games these days. So they have kind of like the monolith system. It's kind of like maps. You kind of go node to node in a way, kind of like Delve and PoE. If you don't know what that is, that's fine. It's basically you go like you hop like location to location. Each of these locations are varying difficulty, varying rewards, and you know what the big chest reward at the end will be. And when you do enough of these, you do the boss of that monolith. And there's like, I don't know, 10 monoliths or something like that. So
10
bosses, they're actually pretty cool, but usually the bosses are a little bit easier than the mobs in the nodes, and I would say that the bosses aren't quite as cool as they are in Path of Exile. They are pretty much on the level of Diablo 4 in terms of coolness and mechanics and all that kind of stuff. So pretty good, but not really mind-blowing. They have said that their next big update will include like pinnacle bosses, and that is pretty exciting on one hand, but on the other, having challenged a lot of the monolith bosses that currently exist in the game, I would say that the timing for a lot of their abilities is a little bit off. And just to be clear, I play in offline mode, so it's not like the game is, their servers are lagging and then the boss didn't properly telegraph. No, it's like the boss is going to drop the meteor and I get hit by the meteor before the animation of him actually dropping it happens. You know, there's a few instances like that, and when we're talking about killing characters in one hit or almost in one hit, it's a little bit problematic if we scale that up to like a pinnacle level for bosses. So that might be a challenge.
I think what it is a lot of the boss fights are old. A lot of them are old, years and years old, and anybody that's played Last Epoch for a long time knows that go play an OG class and then go play Warlock or Falconer. Like, you can feel the difference of the older systems to the newer systems, and EHG is doing their best right now to kind of balance those out and get rid of the old or update the old to bring it to the new. But that's basically what he's talking about. You can always tell, and I guarantee the new Pinnacle boss will be like top notch. I got a feeling.
And I do hope they take that on well. Overall, the game is very cool. They also launched with kind of like the trade, and that has also been really well received. If you want the online experience and trade items and all that, you can have it. Their servers haven't really held up very well. That's where most of the complaints happen. I don't really have that much to say about that because I generally like to play ARPGs by myself these days, and they have offline mode, which is actually really good. The files are saved kind of through your Steam, so it's not just like fully localized files. You can like play the game fully offline on your computer, then you can do it on like your Steam Deck in a different location, and the locally saved files are actually saved on Steam. So you don't have to like copy your character files over or any of that. It's very well done. It's seamless. It's a full offline mode. So like, I don't know, next time Rania and I go on a trip, maybe I'll take my Steam Deck and play on the airplane. I mean, last time I went to Bermuda, didn't have screens on the airplane. Jesus, 2024, am I right? Anyway, so I thought that was a pretty fair compromise. Even though, yeah, their launch kind of tanked online, they didn't really expect that many people. They basically had like 8 times more people than the maximum of their stress test pre 1.0. And now that I know how awesome of a game it is, I am not surprised. But I guess it's pretty difficult for a fairly small company like theirs to take these things into account quite at that magnitude. Overall, I do absolutely recommend you guys try Last Epoch, especially if you're one to kind of try your take at making your own build, and especially if you just like learning an entirely new class each time you roll a new character. I think Last Epoch is 10 out of 10 on those two things in particular. And
10 out of 10 on those two things. All right, I'll take that.
Overall, I think I'd give the game right now an 8.5 out of 10. I think it is fantastic, and I hope their future updates serve us well. And I probably will still play in, the off times from time to time. Maybe I'll stream the game a little bit more. Right now we've got a Forge Night project, and I will do at least one more video coming up in the next few days where I go over my best creation, the Strength Stacked Beastmaster build. That is actually maybe one of the best builds in the game overall. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys have been enjoying the last Epoch streams, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, very cool. I'm glad this video was recommended so many times and I was able to play it. I got to spend a little bit of time with Kripp at BlizzCon this last year, and I felt like that was a very fair and balanced review. And I gotta say, I gotta give it to somebody. If anyone noticed, I don't think there was any cuts in that. I think he just did 12, 13 minutes straight, which is great. I could be wrong. Maybe there was a cut or an edit or two. But I think that was a very fair breakdown. I agree that the old content feels old and it definitely needs to be updated. I agree that there needs to be more endgame that continues to challenge the players and give a variation and variety of things to do. I agree that Ward definitely needs to be addressed, but overall, the fine-tuning, a game made by gamers, a classical action RPG. I do think the more the time people play it, they do feel that LE is closer to PoE than it is D4, and I like the way that he broke that down. Overall, teleprompter, he's not using a teleprompter. I don't think so. Overall, I thought this was a great review. And he gave an overall 8.5 out of 10. And for a launch, okay, obviously the servers were a disaster. Not making excuses. It was really, really bad. But for a full game launch 1.0, 8.5, B plus, solid B, that's pretty good. So I'm glad we were able to watch this together. And I feel like now, strength stacking Beastmaster, what in the world was he playing? What build has he been playing? I feel like I have to go check it out now. You should. See, I know. All right, I'm done. The subathon continues. 75 hours. First link in the description if you want to come and hang out. And of course, I will link Kripp's video in the description. Hopefully you're entertained or at least learned something. Aaron, out.